Hi, Nicholas. Welcome to the Impact Revolution channel. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
Hi, Yoshi. Good to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yes, good morning for you, good night for me. I think it's the longest time frame of interview I ever done. So, how is
Oh, is
the
it? Okay.
weather there in Australia?
Yeah, well, it's getting close to winter. Well, it is winter now, so it is getting colder outside.
Ah,
But today is a great day outside. It's pretty sunny, so yeah, can't complain.
all right, cool. Yeah, it looks very lively. Very good. Nicholas, normally we ask a couple of personal questions so the audience knows you a bit better. And then later we can go to the professional, more interview-like questions. Is that okay?
Yeah,
All
sounds
right,
good.
sure. Cool. So my first question that I really like to ask, Nicholas, is if you could wake up anywhere in the world tomorrow, where it will be and why?
It's a hard question for the first one. Um, I would probably say like I traveled Europe when I was during university, and I loved it. I think
All
one
right,
particular
great.
place that stood out for me was Iceland,
Iceland.
just
Oh,
because it was a very different scenery. It was isolated from the rest of the world. It was kind
uh-huh.
of surreal, like you were kind of stepping on a different planet in a sense. So
Uh,
I think I
cool.
really enjoyed the nature and the picturesque kind of scene there. So it was very peaceful, and yeah, I just really enjoyed being in the moment in that space. So I think yeah, probably Iceland if I would go back again.
All right, very good, cool. I never been there, so yeah, I take a note. Now you make me excited about trying to go there.
Yeah, definitely
Cool.
should.
All right, thank you. And now the second question is, if I ask you what was your happiest moment in your life, Nicholas, which is the first memory that comes to your mind?
Oh wow, that's a tough question as well. Happiest moment. Um, so I think one that comes to mind. Yeah, I don't know if it's my happiest moment, but it's one that's pretty fond of my memory. Is I probably
Uh-huh.
haven't. My high school friends, we kept in touch, obviously,
Uh-huh.
throughout university, but we weren't always super close. Like, as in, we didn't meet each other as much as we did during high school. So I think there was one particular moment,
Uh-huh.
probably near the end of university, where we reconnected and we had a dinner. And it was a great feeling because it felt like everything was the same again, from high school.
Mm,
Like we were meeting every day, obviously, but yeah, I just remember sitting in a cafe having a good chat about our lives and where we've been together, and yeah, we everyone went on different paths and reconnecting as though nothing
that's
ever
cool.
changed, right? So I think that's a pretty happy moment for me. I think in terms of reconnecting with my close friends.
All right, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I travel a lot and I've been in different places, living in different places. So every time I catch up with this kind of people in other places, it's always like that, and it feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. You made me remind me also of these moments. All
Yeah.
right, thanks. All right, now, Nicholas, I see that you are a venture capitalist and you work for this high-tech company, right? I was wondering, what is your why and what is made you to go to this career path?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in terms of my why, I think I personally love helping people. Like I've always wanted
Okay.
to help people in some way or form, like whether it be through my work
Uh-huh.
or personal life. I
Okay,
think
great.
the venture capital career path, I think for me, kind of combines a variety of things. So obviously, in terms of the opportunity to help people. So in this case, early stage entrepreneurs or founders, being
Uh-huh.
able to help them through, obviously capital, which is like funding, but also
Uh-huh.
through support and advisory and helping them grow in the earlier stages as they continue to grow their business, like the
Uh-huh.
earlier stages. But I think kind of for me, like in the personal interest standpoint, I've always been interested in startups. I touched
Uh-huh.
on my university experience, but I was always interested in startups during university. I came from a corporate background originally, so
Okay.
I started my career in management consulting, and I've always combined my passion for startups with obviously my analytical background that I learned from consulting,
Uh-huh.
and obviously I was interested in technology as well. So it was a combination of those factors that made me want to go towards the venture capital path, in the future.
All
It's
right.
still early days for me, so I'm still it's like only been like maybe 2 years in, so it's not super long, but yeah, no, so far I'm really loving it so far. So yeah, I think that's kind of like what led me here.
All right, very good, cool. That's interesting. I was also a management consultant, so I kind of feel
Oh,
related
cool.
as well with what you share. That's really nice. All right, and in so far in your experience, what would you say are the main lessons learned that you could share with us in terms of redefining the business mindset?
Yeah, so I think so. You're talking about founders or for other VCs or like
It's
what
for a
specifically?
successful startup, really, and in terms of from the point of view of doing things differently and better for a social impact or things like that in that way.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of lessons I think for founders. For founders, it's number one, it's a really, really tough journey. Like it's a like if you think about venture-backed startups, like typically on average, they would um, like to an exit point, which is either like getting sold to another company or potentially an IPO. The journey
Okay.
could be as long as 8 to 10 years, so really, really long, right?
Uh-huh.
So obviously, having a lot of grit and determination as from a founder is extremely important. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're really not in it for the long term, then you're going to struggle. Like for example, if you're in it for short-term incentives such as money,
Mm.
um, then you're going to really struggle to like wake up out of bed every day to work on the problem that you're doing, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
but
Sure.
you really have to be motivated and inspired by your own personal passion to solving that problem that you're tackling. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's more of an intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic. So
Totally, yeah.
I'd say for a founder, it's probably like you have to think about why you're in it, essentially, like your why. So
Mm-hmm.
that's important. Um, I think second is don't get too caught up in the hype of what other competitors are doing. Like obviously, it's important to know what your competitors are doing, but I wouldn't be obsessed about what they're trying to build and what they're try to accomplish, and rather than you just focusing on your own product and focusing on your own journey, right? Your own company and building that to
Yeah.
the way that you want it. So that's also pretty
Sure.
important, especially with all the hype that's going on in the market. So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
yeah, those are two that come to mind.
Okay,
Um,
no, very good. Yeah. And what did you say about these competitors? Like, do you have any experience that actually that was very detrimental or it has issues?
sorry, say again.
Yes, I was curious about the competitors point that you raised. That
Hmm.
seems to be very important in your case, and I was wondering if that was something that you may have experienced that it has detrimental, or bad influence, for some of the stuff that you work with.
Yeah, like so. I mean, I've seen this before, and there's been founders who,
Hmm.
obviously that pitch companies, and of course it's very important to be aware of the competitors, but I've seen entire pitches that are just focused around, oh, we're doing this better than this company, and they're kind of
Okay.
obsessed about the competition, right?
Ah,
Rather than building something that you personally think is can be differentiated. So they're always kind
all
of
right.
comparing to a benchmark from other competitors.
Okay, very good point.
So I think from a founder perspective, it could be detrimental in the long term because you're just obsessed about something else rather than
Uh,
your own product or your own solution. So
uh, uh-huh.
um, I think that's a kind of a something to be cautious of. That's all.
Sure, sure. No, that's a very good point. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that example. It make clear. I wanted to know, like for a venture capitalist, I'm sure you have many proposals and many startups, right? So I was wondering, what is your way to choose, the right one, of which do you think, or what are the maybe the criteria that you follow that has been effective so far, Nicholas?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think this really this really varies by every venture capitalist will say something different. So,
Sure.
but I would say that kind of the common themes, especially at the early stage, so kind of early stage investing, is number one, the founders. I think at the earlier stages when there could not be a product yet, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe there is a product, but it's not many, not much traction, so maybe no customers or no revenue yet. The
Uh-huh.
founders are, like understanding the founders and who they are as people is extremely important, and that's
Uh-huh.
a big part of our process in terms of assessing whether we should invest in a startup. Is obviously identifying the founders and understanding their personal connection to the problem that they're building. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe
Mm-hmm.
they've worked in a specific industry before that is that they have some sort of insight into the problem that they're trying to solve. And also, so that's kind of like on a capability standpoint, but in terms of their I guess personal motivations and intrinsic, I think as I touched upon before, that
The passion,
motivation
right?
to, yeah, exactly, the passion and how far they want to take the business. So kind of like the vision in terms of where they want to grow the business to is also kind of an important factor. So other than the founders, I think, second is probably like the product that they're building. So understanding a bit more around how the product is built, what the technical details around that. Do customers really love using it? So if there's early traction from customers, is there strong customer love or stickiness? So usually we would look at sort of metrics to identify, for example, like retention or customer engagement, for example, like things like that. That can be a heuristic in terms of determining whether or not it's a the product is loved. Essentially, that's kind of like the key criteria. I think the third is probably around the market. So there's all other factors, right? So extrinsic to the company that they're building, but in the market that they're operating in, how big is the potential market opportunity that they're targeting? And also, what are some of the tailwinds of the market as well? So what I mean by tailwinds is like some positive external factors or trends that could help the business in the long term as they continue to grow. So it could be things like regulatory changes or consumer preferences toward a certain service within that industry.
All right, very good. Okay, thank you so much. Very interesting. And nowadays, what is the trend that you think is having more, success, or what do you think from your startups for right now? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, yes. So I think trends are, it's a lot of, there's a lot of things going on in the market. Like I'm sure, like it's all over the news that AI is such a big thing at the moment.
Oh yeah.
And it's important to be cautious of the hype. I think, like,
Yeah.
yes, there are a lot of AI startups being built, and we've seen some as well. But it's always important to, again, drill down into the problem or the use case that they're trying to build towards. And if they're trying to build something that's proprietary versus an open source sort of solution. So obviously there's if I just touch on AI as an example, there's obviously a lot of open source AI tools at the moment, and some startups are actually trying to leverage these open source tools as a factor in their product. But what I would say, there's risk in that, because obviously as time goes on, some of these solutions could be outdated, or also they don't necessarily own the database or the proprietary data behind those open source tools as well. So that could
That's
be a
a good
risk.
point. That's a good point, because you are depending on a third party, right? And
Yeah,
that
exactly.
and that can eventually is a risk. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right. Very cool.
I mean, besides AI, there's obviously a lot of other things that I guess VCs are pretty interested in. I think one personally, from my mind, is the climate tech issue.
Yeah, climate change,
Specifically
right?
around the climate transition. In Australia anyway, it's pretty big. It's the government's pushing towards net zero emissions by 2050. So I think it makes sense. Like the market timing makes sense in terms of the transition towards climate or
Totally,
climate
yeah.
neutrality. So I'm really excited by this space personally. It's a great time for a founder to be building in this space, given how much incentives there are by government, but also from even corporations, actually large corporations. So I'm really excited personally by this space.
I was going to ask you, I think we broke it before. Which are the favorites trends that you have? And now you say the environment. Is there any other ones, or the type of startups that you think, I love this kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's like love. I mean, I look a lot at industries that are very antiquated. So what I mean by that is they're typically lagging in some sort of technology adoption, and they're a bit outdated, right, in terms of adopting technology. So one that I've spent a lot of time in during my career is in the built environment space. So kind of like construction, property, even some agriculture as well, like which is outside of the built environment, but that space is interesting to me as well. I think those sort of industries if you think about the typical stakeholders in those businesses, also in that industry, they typically aren't very tech savvy, right? They probably don't. They're probably just traditional people who aren't very used to using technology on a day-to-day basis. So if you imagine
Sure.
builders or general contractors, plumbers, for example, they don't typically, they're not very used to technology on a day-to-day basis, right? But obviously the pace of change of technology is moving so fast that they have to adapt and they have to be able to respond to new sort of services that are available. So I like looking at these spaces where there's obviously startups that are being built, tackling some of these problems that these stakeholders are experiencing at the moment. And yeah, it's obviously a great space because it's a very niche space, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a very sexy industries, I guess, but it's an underserved market, and I think there's opportunity there. So
Sure, no, yeah, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. When you say about this, I thought it was like 3D building or things like that, the 3D construction that could potentially make everything much simpler and much quicker, right? In terms of construction, some companies are doing that. Mm.
yeah, exactly. So I think efficiency is one point, but also so efficiency and productivity from the builders standpoint, but also from the other third party stakeholders, like maybe the suppliers of the materials. It's an
Sure,
easier way
yeah,
for them
logistics,
to,
yeah.
yeah, exactly, logistics, and it's also
Procurement.
an easier way for them to sell products as well, right? Like if there's new channels they can sell to, or easier way to sell to their customers. That's also an area that could be improved as well.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Yeah, they can build a platform, right? That is very easy, an application that can liaise everyone.
Yeah,
Interesting.
exactly.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So, I was wondering, what would you think that could be very impactful for people to focus, for startups to focus? So when they present to you, they have a higher, let's say, percentage of getting funded or supported. What
Yeah.
would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a so even before the pitch, I think like everyone puts a lot of emphasis on the pitch, which is fair enough. Like obviously you got
Mm,
to have a good pitch, but even
sure.
before the pitch, you have to make sure that you have the right. If I think about the content to present for the pitch, right? And the
Uh-huh.
content is something you have to work in the back end and over time to actually generate the results to present during the pitch, right? So
That's fine. Yeah, that's
um,
cool.
so like I think honestly the best thing is to always listen to your customers at the earliest stage,
Uh-huh.
especially when you're building something. Like a lot of people, a lot of and a lot of startup founders, they build something, or especially at the early stage, they might build something that customers don't really love or they don't really want to use or pay
Mm,
for. So
mm,
it's always important to essentially double check with your customers.
mm,
Actually, even before you build a product, just validate the problem exists with the customers and understand what are they willing to pay for a service that you're trying to provide.
uh-huh.
And essentially, yes, that's the element of like like VCs call it product market fit, but essentially it's being
Yes.
able to build something that people love to use, right, or want to pay for. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you just focus on that and you just focus on getting great customer feedback and iterating the product based on the feedback that customers want, I think
Mm,
that's always a good kind of starting point in terms of like the direction you want to build.
uh-huh.
And if once you start to get traction, like some early customers, and you keep building upon that, there'll be good momentum in terms of getting more customers, getting more. Obviously, revenue will come along with that as well. But that's the kind of content that VCs want to see, like the growth trajectory of
Mm,
customers, of revenue. Obviously, can you do that at a sustainable rate? I think that's important as well. But I'll say the content is important, like rather
mm-hmm.
than the pitch itself, because the pitch can be very people can paint an artificial picture of a business during a pitch, right? But obviously, a
Yeah.
lot of VCs will be able to see through that. So um, rather than, I mean, the pitch is still important, but obviously the content behind that is the most important.
Of course, yeah. Because you can do a great presentation, but then if it's behind nothing, then it's not
Yeah,
worth it. No, and I like this the customer growth and all that. It makes sense, that you don't fall in love with the product, you fall in love with the customers and what they really want, and see that there has been an interaction and there has been a feedback, and they like to be part of the journey, right?
yeah,
Is good.
exactly. Yeah, and
Uh-huh.
I think one thing to add as well is like
Yes.
pick your VCs wisely as well. That's
Mm.
additional advice because
Mm.
like if you think about like the relationship between a VC and a founder,
Uh-huh.
it's it's a very long partnership. Like as I mentioned, 8 to 10 years to an exit.
Mm,
That's a very
mm,
long time, right? And
that's right.
people often joke, but it could be even longer than a typical average marriage, So it's kind of like a marriage, yeah. So essentially, you got to pick the right partner who you want to go on the journey with, and that's extremely important. So like, um, yeah, we always encourage the founders to think very carefully about who they want to partner with
Uh-huh.
in the long term. So that's important.
That's really good point, yeah. And what would you advise for that, How do you choose the best VCs?
Yeah, I mean, look, like everyone always says, like all VCs provide capital, obviously
Mm,
funding, but
sure.
beyond that, there's obviously other things that VCs can provide, right? So and people and yeah, VCs differ um, so varily in terms of the additional add-on services they provide. So it could be networks, it could be advisory support, it could be a community-based approach where they provide other people in their networks to help them as well. So
Mm,
it really depends on your sort of business that you're building. So
all right.
if you're a business in a certain industry, maybe that VC is very well known for a specific industry, or that they've invested in startups specifically in that industry before. So
Sure.
they have strong connections in that industry. So
Uh-huh.
always think about the value add that VCs can bring beyond money, I guess, beyond
Mm-hmm.
capital. Um,
Sure.
but I think the
That's
most important is pick a VC based on the people that work at the VC as well. Like
uh-huh.
it's a very relationship based partnership, right?
Totally.
Like
Uh-huh.
you're partnering with someone, an individual
Uh-huh.
within a VC firm. So always think about, yeah, essentially
Yeah.
those people that you're going to be on the journey with as well.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's like a business partner, like another founder kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
In a way. Okay, very
exactly.
good. Yeah, I like this about the added value, right, and the support. I was wondering, what will you, in your case, in your venture capitalist organization, what is your added value to the startups, or what do you like to do for them?
Yeah, sure. So I work in Investible, which is an early stage VC fund based in Australia, but we have an office in Singapore as well.
Okay.
Of course, yeah, we have a traditional funds business, so we've got multiple funds running at the moment, and we're deploying or out of. But we have this unique model where we have a network. It's called Club Investible, but essentially it's a network of high net worth individuals, kind of over 150 actually, coming
Okay.
together and forming a large angel syndicate. So
Okay.
essentially, all these individual angel investors, they can actually co-invest alongside the deals that our fund invests in. So, for
Okay.
example, if you're a founder and Investible decides to partner with you, we can also, and you have obviously space left in the round that you're trying to raise, we can also market that to our Club Investible network, and
Mm-hmm.
that network can obviously help bring expertise in terms of certain industry expertise, or also certain kind of specialty or capabilities as well, which we can help give to the founder
Uh-huh.
as a offer of support beyond money. So
All right.
it could be introductions to customers, it could be, as I mentioned, advisory support, but also just general mentorship and guidance. Because a lot of these individuals are very reputable in the industries that they've been in.
Uh-huh.
They're very high ranked in terms of the positions they hold within the companies that they've worked at. So um, that sort of network is, and it's also a global network as well, by the way. That sort of
Hmm.
network is very valuable for the founders that we've invested in.
Definitely, yeah. That's very useful, of course. Great. And what is the best support or most effective support that Nicholas you thought is needed or they have appreciate or have really make a change or transform, or what's the most impactful, sorry, support that you guys give?
Yes, as a VC or
Yeah, so in your experience so far, right, there are different things that you guys do, as you just described. I was wondering if there is anything that is more impactful to most of the startup. I was wondering if there was something.
yeah, look, I mean, it really varies by the founder as well, because obviously some founders
Hmm.
they want a lot of support because obviously it might be their first time, for example, or there's been experienced founders who've done it multiple times and they probably need less support and they don't, and
Sure.
that's okay. Like we don't need to like be very very extremely close. Like if they don't want support, we'll be there when they need
Uh huh.
us. But if they don't want our help, then that's fine as well. We can
Uh
take a
huh.
step back. But I think one thing that I guess if you just think about VCs in general, I think what they offer is introductions to people they know. Because if you think about VC, the job of a venture capitalist, they
Uh
meet a
huh.
lot of people every day, whether
Uh
that be
huh.
founders or other VCs or
Uh huh.
even people in the startup ecosystem.
Uh huh.
And that network is extremely valuable, I think. So
Uh-huh. Sure.
if I was to think about like what a lot of VCs do is they've got strong connections with people in the ecosystem that they can connect founders with. Um, it could be additional. Yeah, it could be if you're trying to raise from another more money or more
Uh-huh.
funding, you can always introduce them to other VCs who might be able to follow on at a larger capacity, for example.
All right.
Or for example, if you've met some customers that are looking for a solution, you can also introduce founders to them as well, because obviously you can link them up and introduce them to
Uh-huh.
customer. So I think that ability to introduce people to your networks is extremely valuable. I think
Definitely.
that
Yeah.
a lot
Sure.
of founders don't really think about, or I mean, they do think about it, but it's definitely such a high value um, kind of opportunity for founders to tap into that network.
Yeah, no, totally, because it takes time, right, to make these relationships, and it takes time to build this trust, right? And getting access to that is definitely very valuable, right? Mhm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicola. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was wondering about this mentorship and guidance. Yeah, what is the most impactful or the best practices that you could make share in these 3 minutes that we have left?
Yeah, no, yeah, is on a personal. So if on a personal level, a mentor. Are you talking about personal level or on a professional level? Because I think that's
Professional
different.
level, professional level, and if you want to share the personal level, of course, feel free as well.
Yeah, I mean, professional level. I think always seek feedback and be open minded, and
Mm,
that I mean that goes for anyone, like not just founders, but even
yeah, for
VCs or
us,
anyone,
for
not,
sure.
not even in the just any sort of working professional. I think it's always
Sure.
being open minded and being coachable is extremely
Uh-huh.
important.
Uh-huh. I'm being coachable,
Because
right?
obviously
Yeah.
you're not going to be the best at what you do from the
Mm,
beginning, especially when you start out. And I think if you have strong self awareness about your abilities and your strong points and your weak points, and
mm,
you have a willingness to want to improve, I think
mm,
that's always going to get you places.
definitely. Uh-huh.
Especially if you're open to receiving critical feedback from people you work with or
Uh-huh.
people you've interacted with. I think that's extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a trait that we look for in founders as well. Is like, are they coachable? Are they able to take on feedback really well and also act on the feedback as they continue to
Mm,
move on, right?
yeah,
But
that's a good
that's
point.
I think it's a good skill for anyone really, like not just founders, but just anyone in general. I think if you
Especially
want to improve in life,
nowadays,
yeah,
that everything
exactly,
is
yeah,
changing so fast. We have to
yeah,
relearn and, forget or unlearn many things, right, on the way. Mm,
yeah, exactly. And there's so many resources out there available online, but
mm,
also through people as well. And
yes,
it's so easy to connect with someone virtually now, right? As well, just to ask for feedbacks or even advice or mentorship. So it's crazy how open this space can be in terms of getting advice or knowledge. So
definitely.
I think that's
Yeah.
a key, yeah, a really key thing
Mm.
to yeah, in terms of mentorship.
All right, cool. All right. Personally, you were going to share something?
Oh yeah, no, I think it's probably sit on the lines of a similar point. I think yeah,
Yeah. All
having that
right,
mindset, that growth mindset is extremely important,
definitely.
and
Yeah.
yeah, not just in a professional setting, but also personally as well.
I totally agree with that. Yes, we have 50 seconds left. Nicholas, I wanted to ask you one last question, and then later you want to share something else. Just let me know. If you could leave a message to the whole world, it will be a quote or whatever. What will it be?
that's a that's a good question. Um, yeah, I'll say like this is a quote I personally really like, and
Yes.
that's always kind of stuck in my mind.
Uh huh.
Is I actually don't know who made the quote, but I just remember it very fondly.
Sure.
So I guess the quote is "Shoot for the moon,
Uh huh.
but if you fail, you'll still be with the stars." I guess so.
Okay.
Basically, the meaning behind that is obviously aim high for what you want to do and achieve in life, and if you don't meet the goals or don't meet that large
I
vision, then
love
that's
it.
okay. You'll still be up there. So it's
We
always good to
had
aim high, I think.
we had that in our previous coaching programs, so I like that
Oh
story.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know. Do you have anything to share that we may have not covered that you would like to share with us, Nicholas?
Uh, yeah, sure. I mean, like obviously, I'm pretty open to introductions or people who want to reach out to me.
Sure.
Whether it be founders or other VCs or other people in the startup ecosystem, I'm happy to share my knowledge and thoughts. So yeah, my DMs are open, I guess. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to chat all the time. So that's
That's
great.
lovely. Thank you so much, Nicholas. I really appreciate it, and our audience will really appreciate that too.
No, no
Thank you
worries.
so
Thanks,
much.
Joshi. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Chat to you
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye bye.